Hello, Gordon Molyneux here again. If you saw the first part, the first video, you'll have heard the explanation of how the African talking drum works. The principle that it works, it transfers onto the two-tone drum the tune of the spoken language. And I was explaining how useful it is. Of course, it has no service charge, there's no tariff to pay. It's free, you can be on as long as you like and it won't cost you any more. The big downside of it, of course, is that what you say is heard by everybody. If you're using a really big drum, people from 10 miles, 15 miles around will hear everything that you're saying. But it does have its uses, and I'm going to explain one day that the drum came in particularly useful for me. Every morning I would go off and teach in the Bible school and come back at midday for my meal. Now it just so happened that one year a young fellow from the United States came out, and because there was room in my house, he came and shared the house with me, and he was there in order to help on the mechanical and the practical side of mission work, building, repairing engines and motors and lights and all this sort of thing. A wonderfully useful guy. And Steve and I got on very, very well together. I would go off each morning to teach in the Bible school, in the college, and Steve, would go off to his building site out in the forest where they were putting up a new secondary school room. And they were using bricks and timber and all that sort of thing. And so we would agree to meet back at the house for lunch at a certain time of day. And one day, when I came back from my teaching, the meal had been more or less prepared and was ready to be enjoyed. I was ready, I was very hungry. No sign of Steve. And Steve was way out some distance in the forest. And I waited and I waited, the food was getting colder. I didn't know what to do. And then I thought, hey, why not use the talking drum? Why not call him on the drum? Well, of course, you've got to think, how are you going to say that you're late for lunch? Is there such a phrase as you're late for lunch? And then I remember there is a certain stereotype phrase that is used whenever hunger is being referred to. Songole da karibe yasi. I haven't got a thing in my stomach. Songole da karibe yasi. This is what it sounds like. Songole da karibe yasi. So I thought that's what I'll tell him, that I'm hungry, that haven't got anything in my stomach. And then I thought, just a minute, this message must be receiver specific, otherwise that message will go to people within a radius of 2 miles, and there might be a descent of hundreds of people also expecting something to eat. So I must somehow make it clear that this is to nobody else except Steve out there in the forest. Well, how do you do that? Well, there is a term on the drum language for white person. White people in that part were but there were very few of us. Ikitali banigi kamuzungu, Ikitali banigi kamuzungu, which means child of the white man. So that's the way I will separate out who I want to come because I'm getting hungry. Child of the white man. And then come quickly, kele, 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 kele. And then there's a lovely phrase that says, tambusa maguru. In other words, make your feet walk one ahead of the other. So I hope you're getting the composite picture of this message. Child of the white man, come quickly, make your feet walk one ahead of the other. I haven't got a thing in my stomach. Now I think you'll agree that all that comes together as a very coherent message. And that's what I was hoping anyway. So this is the message that I sent out. You might be able to recognize parts of it. It starts off with Ikitali baniki kamuzungu. Well, of course, what I had forgotten to think about was that Steve was the one person in the whole area who wouldn't understand the drum language. So what was the point of directing the message to him if he didn't even understand a word of the drum language? Well, I was hoping that somebody would tell him. And do you know, about 10 minutes later, in comes Steve, out of breath, and he said, "I gathered lunch is ready." I said, "Yes." I said, "How did you get the message?" He said, "Well, of course, it didn't mean anything to me, but we were there putting up a wall in the new site, and suddenly the workmen who were with me said, 'Shh, wait, there's a message.' And they listened, and then they said to Steve, 'It's for you.' And so he said, "What's the?" He said, "Your buddy back at the base is hungry, and he wants you to go quickly because he hasn't got a thing in his stomach." And so here I am. And so I thought, isn't that a wonderful use of the drum language? How practical it is. There are many other uses that it can be put to. As I mentioned before, it can be used to announce a funeral. It can be used to announce a wedding. You can name an individual from across the river if you know the village that they come from and the drum language of his mother or his father. You can even make a joke at somebody's expense. You can make fun of somebody across on the other side of the river or coming up the road without them really knowing it, especially if they're from another ethnic group and they don't use the same drum language. You can make all sorts of caustic comments about the white person who doesn't understand your language because you can send it out on the drum. It's a wonderful thing. And as I said in my previous video, it's just such a pity that this wonderful art form is dying because of the advent of the mobile phone. And whenever I traveled in Central Africa, I would urge the people out there not to lose this priceless art form of the African drum language. Thank you.